I'm Marlon West. I am a visual effects supervisor and longtime effects animator at Walt Disney Animation Studios. I'm native of St. Louis. I've been living in Los Angeles for 35 years and working at Disney for 30 years. And I'm here at St. Louis University Museum of Art. Growing up in St. Louis, I have to say I am a St. Louis. I've been not lived in St. Louis since I was 18 years old, which is a long time ago. But I feel like a St. Louis and through and through. All my formative, my parents are both from here. My brother, my aunts and uncles, cousins, most of them still live here. Come back here a lot. I've never not come to St. Louis once or twice a year since like 1981. But my formative experiences of growing up in St. Louis, growing up in University City, the wisdom and home training, as we say, from my parents, all very, very much St. Louis based. And even my interest in art and comics and filmmaking, even though you know, there was no film industry here when I was coming up or anything like that. My uncle, my uncle Sam, he was a avid comic book reader and avid. He did not use this word, but I would describe him as a cinephile. He just loved movies. He was kind of brother. If he liked something, he would watch it several times because he would watch it with everybody in the family and sit there and watch you watch it. That's how I learned that movies really affect people. 'Cause my father, who got a lot of who I am from, he proudly will say that, nobody's ever made a movie I want to see twice. Now, he may have changed, but, now my mother is different. She watched something that she loves over and over again. But even living with my mother, but my Uncle Sam really kind of taught me by example how movies really affect movies and music and art, because he was big into comics and stuff too, really affect people. I've been on the road to being an artist, I feel like my entire life. I've always drew, always had little sketchbooks. I was one of these brothers who was drawing in the corners of his homework and his thing. And, when I was going to school here in St. Louis, I would describe myself as I won't say the middle of the pack, but among several kids that could draw good. A lot of my good friends could draw, natural talent, better than I could. But it's all I wanted to do. Most of them got on to something that was going to make them some real money or got a real education. And this is all I really ever wanted to do. All I really ever wanted to do was make films and be part of storytelling. The biggest challenge I faced as a filmmaker or wanting to get into this was, growing up in St. Louis, I didn't know anybody who had anything to do with Hollywood. Movies that could have been shot from another planet into my television, into movie theaters. That's how far Hollywood felt to me, how foreign it was. But I saw a couple of photographs of like people behind the scenes. I saw a picture of like Willis O'Brien animating King Kong or Ray Harryhausen animating, monsters from one of his films. And not only was it for my like childhood brain like a job or a grown man could still be playing with something to look like a toy, it also let me know that people did these jobs, that there was somebody who labored over the process of making images. And this was in the 60s and early 70s. There was no internet and stuff, and I didn't get my hands on any books on the subject until maybe I was in high school. But those two pictures and some like them were like my Rosetta Stone or something. All I just kept going back to them and like, okay, what else can I learn from this? So a real education was kind of stood in the way until I was like in college maybe. But I just trial and error. What I had was like blind tenacity about, I would make these little Super 8 films with my toys and things and, you know, take them to the photo mat, get them developed and come back and get them. And I was always disappointed. Like my my brother Tony and my parents and stuff, cousins would come over, they'd look at them, we'd string them up on the projector, and everybody would look at them, and they'd be like, "That's nice, Marlon." And I was like, "Y'all just being nice. This is terrible." But I just kept at it. I have been in the business of making animation for 40 years. I didn't even, sometimes when I'm being self-deprecating, would not even describe myself as an artist. I would describe myself as a crafts person because I was doing a job I was proud to do. But, there's only one person's name goes in front of the movies that I make, Walt Disney. It's not the possessive film by a director or anybody else. So I've been proud to work there and proud to make these films that go out and touch people. But when we went home during lockdown and I was away from the studio and away from all these people who could draw caricatures and likenesses of people so much better than I have stayed in my lane for years, decades of drawing splashes and drawing explosions and things like that. And there's people I know, when I started posting these on Facebook and things like that, they were like, "I didn't even know you could draw a human face." I didn't know you could do that, man. And for me, they were just a cathartic thing. Some of these stories that were driving a lot of what was going on during the 20 and 21. I was sitting at home and, I initially was only going to draw like 4 of these. I was going to draw George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and I was going to end on a happy note with Kristen Cooper because he just had this episode that he survived. And then I ended up doing like 44 of them. And because during that lockdown, I would become aware of some other case would happen. And I was seeing, I got a trans son and he was posting things about Tony McDade. And I was like, huh. So there was a couple I did just for him to let him know that I saw him and what he was interested in. Or, sitting there on lockdown, what could have been the 76th birthday of Emmett Till came along. Gloria Richardson passed away like months from being 100 years old. Sister with the classic side glance, batting away but a bayonet. So there was a reason to keep doing them. And I thought they were just going to be something I just did for myself. Put them on Facebook. They didn't go viral. People would like them. And that was it. I just did them. They were all screenshots, off my computer. I didn't really do them on any type of software that somebody would use that were doing real art. I didn't do them in Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator. I did them in this draw over tool we have at work that we would just use to make notes to each other. And when I drew them and I took a screenshot, I closed that file. I never even knew if they were going to open up again. So when the Museum of Social Justice in LA reached out to me about it, I was like, damn, I hope they still there. And then I was, that was in Los Angeles for a little over 6 months. And then they reached out to me here at SLU, and I was very flattered to have another life in my hometown. Very aware as a St. Louisan about Mike Brown's death. I was very aware in real time how upset people were about how long he laid in the street. First time I ever heard people chant Black Lives Matter was at Powell Symphony Hall. A very integrated group of people interrupted a performance there, shouting Black Lives Matter. So my experience was very local, initially very multiracial. Took a while for that to become something that other folks want to try to push back against. And when I started this series, I knew I had to do Mike Brown. And part of doing them in this comic book style and part of doing them based on selfies. Almost, I would say half of them are based on selfies. So they got an intimacy to them. They're looking right in the camera. And even the ones that aren't selfies or portraits, the people sat for, looking right at camera. And I really wanted to lean into that. When it came to Mike Brown in particular, I found a photo of him. I was a couple of years younger, probably 15 or 16 in the photo that I based that on. But Mike Brown, as a child, and he was so in the news as this big monster. Now, there's a lot of big 18-year-olds. I never was one of them, but there's a lot of big old people. There's a lot of big people in the world. But he was 18 years old, just out of high school. And so many of these drawings are of children that were perceived as so much scarier than a child. Tamir Rice, Elijah McCain, a lot of these folks are threatening, suspicious, bigger than they are actually, scarier than they are actually. I did not have the forethought that this would come to St. Louis when I was doing it, because I never thought they were going to be in a museum at all or any type of gallery space. But I knew I had to do Mike Brown. I knew I had to do him as a child, which is what he is, will always be. A brother that I know well, Nicholas Smith, self-describes as an artivist. And I would have to copy him on that. I don't have any real motivation to do art for myself, to express something that I really have to say as a creative individual. I make cartoons for a living. I'm very proud to make cartoons for a living. But they're really tributes. They're all based on photos that other people have taken or these people took of themselves. And I'm just using my modicum of skills to try to put them in some kind of unifying light by drawing them the same way in this comic book style and making these images big. They're bigger in this space than I ever saw them. I drew them like this. My desire to actually say something or make some type of impact. I mean, it's small. I don't know how many people are going to wander in here and see this. I don't know how many people saw them on Facebook or, they have already gone out further than I ever thought they were going to go, because they were like a selfish, cathartic thing just for me to sit with these people and stare at their photos, look into their eyes and draw them, pay some type of tribute, bear witness. But for them to go out and touch other people and people see them in a different light, that's kind of icing on the cake for me. I've done other things over the years. Like in 2018, I did a push-up for everybody who died due to gun violence, and I think I did 14,634 push-ups or something. I average of 30 a day. I posted those on Facebook or Instagram every day, and that was heavy, because that was every morning I got up and went on Gun Violence Archive, subtracted the day before's number from the current day, came up with a number anywhere between 17, the lowest, 72, the highest. Go out and videotape myself doing it. And then I wanted to actually always find a story, just so it wasn't this number, at least one story. And it's hard to always find one, so I always used a multiple. And I think I was into February before one of these multiple deaths wasn't of a woman that was killed by her boyfriend, ex-husband, estranged husband, or whatever. This phenomenon of women being killed by dudes who won't take no for an answer is such a thing, because I was 2 months into that project before there was any mass shooting that wasn't a woman and her children. Now, that was something I only found out because I was doing that. And because that's not how it's reported. People don't talk about gun violence that way very often. Because I think if people were more concerned about their sister, their auntie, their mother, than they were about some faceless urban crime, we'd have some different policies around guns in this country. What I was trying to do with this series while I was doing them in real time is, even though there was an immediacy to many of them, a lot of these people were in the news, people were being tried, or we were hoping that people would be tried for some of their murders. Some of these folks, like Emmett Till, happened 60 years ago or more. 3 civil rights workers. And it became clear to me that there's years. Now, I'm talking about stuff that's all in the 20th century, but we're talking about the whole history of this country of black people being less than human, being scarier, being bigger, being needing to be policed, needing to be manhandled, needing to be being devalued as far as their pain and their death. So that's why I actually included stuff that happened in the 40s and in the 50s and in the 60s, because this is like a long story. This is not just like something somebody may have heard about this because of Ahmaud Arbery or George Floyd, but my mama was aware of it for a lot longer. My brother and I were a lot longer. I mean, every black parent has to give that talk to their kids, especially their sons, about how to talk to the police. Make sure you have your receipt with you in the store. I don't care about you. And when we grew up in New City, we had a whole lot of white friends going, and but we got instruction about how we may be treated different than our friends when we go someplace. When I was working on this project, and it wasn't even a project, but I was just seeing them all together. It is a trip through time. They're in the loose order in which I made them, but they're not in chronological order, but it is like 100-year journey. Yeah, a particular piece that was challenging, I have to say Elijah McCain was the most challenging. One, is there was something about him, his story was so tragic and upsetting to me, such a sweetie. The picture I was basing it on looks at once like what I looked like when I was his age. So I've yet to try to talk about this without making myself tear up. But his was the toughest. And I got to say, it's the least successful because I don't really feel like I captured his sweetness. I have to say, the John Crawford one, that was one that really stuck in my craw quite a bit, that I couldn't wait to get to, because yeah, I knew I was kind of doing them on the anniversary of people's deaths or anniversary of their births and stuff. And when his came along, I just remember my brother Tony and I being so upset about that one, because that brother's standing in the store in an open carry state holding store merchandise. And that was actually one of the most successful drawings. I wanted to get him in that series, and then I was really happy with how that drawing came out. Those were the two kind of. They all have some kind of particular story. I could talk about why and what the challenges were of each one, but Elijah McCain and John Crawford are two of the standouts for me. The audience reaction has been one that I was very surprised by, because I had drawn these as individual pieces. People experienced them over the almost 2 years I was doing them as individual pieces. But when people came in here and they see them all together and they're so much bigger and they're staring at you, people have been very, very moved by them. When I was here at the opening, there were 2 SLU students who came up to me And they were very upset. They were very shook. It made them very almost hopeless, as far as it made them very fearful, because one of them actually said that, like, I'm old enough where I'm not with my mother, and I'm in college now. I'm not with my parents. I'm out by myself a lot more. And all this years of this gave them almost a hopelessness, not intentional, but I was very moved, and they stayed here. They went through. They were two of the last people to leave. I think, my intention for doing all of these is that all of these people are people, that they are to be celebrated, each and every one. I had someone respond to an article about this piece, and someone's like, "Well, who are these people would you have your child emulate?" And I was like, "Well, there's a whole lot of people. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is up in here. John Lewis is up in here. Kamala Harris is up in here." But I see what you're getting at, and you don't need to be someone to be emulated to deserve to live. But you don't have to be a hero. I mean, I've drawn these people in a style that is usually reserved for superheroes, but you don't have to be a superhero to deserve respect and love and deserve to live. I mean, it is amazing to be here at SLU, in this museum. This is a building that I've driven by all my life. Most of it, I didn't know what was in it. And to have some banners with my name on them, drawings that I did, is just something that blows my mind to even see it, to even know it, to know people can come up in here and look at these drawings and walk through these halls. They painted these walls white to make it more immersive, like a comic book. It's not always white up in here. Because this has been like a collaboration with me and this university, I couldn't be more thrilled, I couldn't be more proud to have this be in my hometown. If it doesn't go anywhere else, I'll be thrilled.